this is my father. Adair now knows my background, and I think, David, you know my background too. This is the Second World War. This is my father and me after the Second World War. Displaced. I'm born into a displaced family, into an identity of here where we are not at home, and there is no home for us on this planet. This background has given me distance. I'm a little bit like a traveler from another galaxy. You know The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxies, the book? There is a journalist from the galaxies who writes for the yearly annual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxies, and he has to write about planet Earth. So every day he would write in the morning, planet Earth, this is what happens on planet Earth, this is what human beings do, how they are. This is what I do. Somehow I'm like a traveler from another galaxy through my background, and I look at what happens on this planet, and I'm constantly amazed. How does it feel to have distance? And why is it important for us now? I think I was born into that. It was not my choice. But I think it has some value in times of crisis to have distance. So I want to invite you into my distance. I think in times of crisis, it's good to take a step back. So how does it feel to have distance? I want to make a test on you now. Give you a feel of it. What is normality for you, for us, for whom? So if I ask you now something, 2 questions. What would be your choice? Are you in favor of treating your slaves with kindness? Or do you think that this would be wrong? How do you feel? You feel, oh, it's perhaps the wrong choice. It's not the right question. Slavery shouldn't be there. These questions are not the right questions. This is how I feel continuously. Oh, I'm surrounded by the wrong questions, by the false choices. This is how I feel on this planet at this time. Capitalism or socialism, local or global, big government or small government, rich or poor, east or west, men or women, structure or agency, political right or left, violent or non-violent, religious or secular. All that for me is somehow wrong. All these dichotomies. As you all know, I have lived globally since about 40 years, 38 years now. And I have done my doctoral research in, it doesn't work there, yeah. In Somalia and Rwanda, and on the background of Nazi Germany. My question was, okay, if there is a story of humiliation in European history, that Germany was to be humiliated through the Versailles treaties after the First World War, and this humiliation led to the Second World War. Is there something similar in Africa today, that humiliation and war and genocide are linked? And if yes, how? This was my doctoral dissertation. This is Rwanda, the genocide in 1994. And being in Rwanda, I really felt that feelings of humiliation are the nuclear bomb of the emotions. Because in Rwanda, those who wanted to instigate a genocide didn't need money and weapons. They simply had a radio station, and they said to the Hutu population, if you love your Hutu cause, our Hutu cause, you have machetes at home. Take your machete, go to your Tutsi neighbors and kill them. Hack them to death. And they did. It was the narrative of humiliation again. The narrative of humiliation, namely that if we do not kill all the Tutsis now, they will humiliate us in the future as they did in the past. The same that Hitler said. The Jews plan to humiliate, to dominate the world. If we don't kill them all now, they will do that. So genocide is a prevention against future imagined humiliation. Same situation in Rwanda. So what I learned from my fieldwork is that dynamics of humiliation lead to rifts. If I humiliate you, you don't want to cooperate with me anymore. They lead to rifts. and to break the breakdown of international relations, intergroup relations, interpersonal relations, intrapersonal relations, and relations with our ecosphere, with our reality. It's at all levels, macro level to micro level. And when I come to the United States, I really feel how cycles of humiliation hinder reality testing. You know, I feel when I'm coming to the United States, I'm hit by a wall of hatred that I don't feel the same way in Europe or in Asia, a little bit also in South America. What is the wall of hatred here? You know, there's one group, the Tea Party perhaps as a kind of buzzword. There is a kind of hatred entrepreneurship in the United States. And you know, there are cycles of humiliation here in the United States that are in motion. And I think they are instigated, not least because they make it easier for a third party to rule, divide and rule. This is a second thought. So when I say to Mariana, this here is white. And I say to her, you are in my camp. Therefore, you have to agree that this is white, even though you see it's not white. So this is, to me, the relationship to reality as soon as cycles of humiliation are in motion. Then the reality testing is suppressed. You don't dare to say that this is not white anymore when you want to be part of my camp. So this is what I see here in the United States. And why is it like that? Because beliefs have two functions. This is Robert Jervis, who sits at CIPA, who has formulated this. He's a political scientist. He says they have the function of understanding the world and reality testing, like seeing that this is not white, and then social and psychological function of meeting the psychological and social needs to live with oneself and others. If I say to you, this is white, and you have to agree with me if you want to be in my in-group, then you will somehow no longer look at reality. So this is the reason for why cycles of humiliation are so disruptive. I've written 4 books, Making Enemies, 2006, Emotion and Conflict, 2009, Gender, Humiliation and Global Security, 2010, and then this is the 2012, the last book, and it came out in our new Dignity Press. Very proud, we are very proud. There in the corner we have this book in this box there, and we have the 4 more books that came out in Dignity Press this year. So you are, you know, warmly welcome and invited to look at this box and take it out, and you can also buy this book if you want. I said that it's good to have distance in times of crisis. So let's take a step back. These are pictures for taking a step back. I will touch some important terms. And I just go quickly through them now so that you know that they are there. Human nature. Is it selfish, aggressive, warlike, evil? Question mark. Then circumscription. You might not know this term. It's an important term. Commons dilemma, the commons dilemma. The security dilemma. The ingathering of the human tribes. Community framing versus Wall Street framing. Unequal worth versus equal dignity, domination versus partnership, then unity in diversity, then the term subsidiarity. Very few people know that term. It's a very important term. Then all kinds of terms for the glue of big love. There are many words for that. Satyagraha is not it's a good term that Gandhi brought us. Then pessimism, optimism. These are somehow kind of trigger words that are important, I think. And then many of you know me by now, and you will be very bored when you see that, because you know that I use that every time to somehow bring us into the distance of standing outside of our planet and looking at it and saying, wow, here we are, this is our planet. And we are on this planet only since 200,000 years, which is a very, very short time. The dinosaurs were here for millions of years, and we haven't reached that. We are about to die out, and You know, we haven't done even the time the dinosaurs did. So we started here in Africa, and then we migrated. It took us the first 95% of our time on this planet. Let us welcome one more. Welcome, please come in. Do we have a seat? Welcome. It took us the first 95% of our history, of our time on this planet, to populate the planet. So the first round of globalization is that we started here and we went everywhere. And we always, you know, one settlement was there, then it became bigger, then part of it went to the next valley where they found a lot of abundant wild food and could hunt and gather. So for 95% of our history, we were in small groups and we always fragmented and had the impression that there would be always another valley to go to. Of course, we know today that the planet is finite. The size of the planet is finite. So at some point, it was bound to happen that the next valley was no longer untouched, that there were other people there. When did that happen for the first time? When did that begin to happen? 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, it started to happen. That we somehow had filled up the globe to a certain point, and the next valley was already taken, and we were stuck, and we couldn't go there. And what did we, as a human family, do? We adapted. And what is this adaptation called? The Neolithic Revolution, or the development of complex agriculture. So 10,000 years ago, roughly, a new era of our history started, which is only the last 5%, which is very difficult and much more difficult than the first 95%. And since we are living today, we look back and we think that our history is only the past 5%, the past 10,000 years. But basically, our most important history, I would say, is the first 95%. So if we look at it in a very simplified way, just very simplified, then we had the first 95% of our time on our planet. We were living in relationships not without conflict. It was not paradise, but in relationships which I always model by the infinity symbol, because it shows how two people can be two, stay two, without becoming one, but be connected. This is the infinity symbol. You see that? We are connected, we are two, we are not one, but we are connected. So this is the infinity symbol, and I use that for non-dualism, for non-dualistic relationships, where the identity in unity. And then 10,000 years ago, and there comes in the word circumscription, there was suddenly a limit. Circumscription is the Latin word for that. And here, 10,000 years ago, there is a marked shift. So the past 5% of our history, we were not in these relationships, we were in top-down relationships. This was the adaptation that followed to the new situation. Like when you are on a piece of land and you sow in spring and want to harvest in autumn, you must be afraid of your neighbors taking your harvest, which also happened. The Chinese wall is there because the nomadic Mongols came and stole in autumn what the Chinese farmers had planted. So it happened the last 10,000 years, and people had to be afraid continuously of their neighbors. It's called the security dilemma. And in that situation, a completely different culture developed, namely a dominator model of society, which means there is a strong man at the top who keeps in line his in-group. The men at the borders, the young men are sent out to go and die in war if necessary, and the women are kept in the center. So this is the dominator model of society. This what Riane Eisler, the activist and social scholar, would say the dominator model of society. This is the partnership model of society. Today we are here, and we don't know yet where we will go. So if we look at our history as a human family on this planet, we can say there are two very, very important turning points. There was one 10,000 years ago, and there is another in which we live now, as important. what happened? What does it mean when I say we are living in a turning point time now? It has a linguistic marker that happened in 1757. In 1757, the meaning of the verb to humiliate changed from pro-social to antisocial. Before, it was pro-social, to humiliate and humble your wife, for example, the lowly people, show them their due lowly place. It was seen as pro-social to do that. In 1757, for the first time in the English language, to humiliate meant to violate somebody's dignity. So there is a marked change in this year. And it somehow marks the change towards the human rights ideal of equality in dignity. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. This sentence is the first sentence of the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This sentence before 1757 would not be like that. This sentence would be, all human beings are born unequal in dignity and rights. So we live in a very, very important turning point time. So I sometimes use this as a way to show that. If I respect myself so much and I respect you the same way, on the same level, then we are on one level of respect. Okay? So we could say that the first 95% of our history on our planet, we were in relationships more or less like that. Of course, there were differences, but they were not institutionalized, not deeply institutionalized. There was no deeply institutionalized hierarchy. Interestingly, also no systematic war in that time. Okay, what happened 10,000 years ago or 11,000 years ago and later? It's not one moment, of course. It's a start. It started about 10,000 years ago. Okay, what happened? What did we do in the context of, adapting to the fact that suddenly, the planet was full, you could say, very simplified? What did we do? We erected a gradient hierarchy of people, who dominated, who presided, higher beings who presided over lower beings. We erected this gradient. And this is a kind of emergent. It was not a decision, it was a kind of consequence of the new situation. This is the world within which we live now since about 10,000 years. And what we think is our history, but the history is just the last 5%. We have to be clear about that. So what is the human rights message? The core of the human rights message is that we build down this gradient again. That we say, okay, during the past 10,000 years, it was legitimate to humiliate. It was legitimate to, that higher beings presided over lower beings. It was legitimate. Everybody believed it was divinely ordained or it was nature's order. But now we say, no, it is not legitimate that some people are higher and some are lower. Everybody is born with equal dignity and rights. This is the completely new world of human rights ideals. It's going back to what we had prior to 10,000 years ago, that everybody is on the same level. So this is the kind of movement of moral sentiments, of ethical frames, of the history of our human family on this planet. And during the past 5% of our history, when we had these dominator societies everywhere, almost everywhere on our planet, the desire to be equal in dignity always was there. Most of the founders of new religions started with that idea. Buddha, the Islam, Sikhism, they all start with the idea that everybody should be equal. But it never could flourish, like also Jesus, and what did happen later? We have a very hierarchical church. So it starts, this desire was always there, but as soon as institutions were built, it was hierarchical. So we have religion, religious founders, then we have 1757, then we have 1948, human rights, and then in the first time, after 1948, there was a big emphasis on rights, equality in rights. I think now it is time to focus on dignity. We come in our human history from, when we look at the past 10,000 years, we come from unequal rights to equal dignity. And I think now is the time for dignity to think of. And the transition is difficult. You know, we have still today, if you think just of the Taliban, they would not subscribe to equal dignity to all. They don't do that. So we have still a lot of people on this planet who don't subscribe to this human rights ideal. So we have a very difficult transition. Traditional people in traditional societies, they would not agree with what I say now, for example. So we have violent confrontations, and then we have double standards, which make these confrontations even worse. So what should we do in this situation? We seem to be on a journey, and all of us, we believe in equal dignity for everybody, I think, who sits here. But we know that outside there are many people who don't. We are in a transition. Okay? What do we do in this transition? How do we nurture this transition? I think all of you, we want to nurture it. We want to bring it forward. How do we do that? One thing would be to get angry at those who can't understand that we are right. Not a very dignified way to do. So what do we do instead? I think the step to take the step back and to look, why did we have these dominator societies in the past 10,000 years? This is a valuable step to take, because this dignifies those who don't think like us. And I often use this story of honor killing. You know, I worked in many parts of the world where also honor killing was a tradition. It's still in many places practiced. When a girl's chastity is violated, she has been raped, for example, then the family honor is humiliated. Imagine a mother stands in front of you, says, our daughter has been raped. Now our family honor is humiliated. We have to repair it and remedy it by killing our daughter, because she is now a sick limb on the body of our family, and you have to save the body by amputating the limb. Okay, and you stand there, what would you think? You would think, wow, this mother, you know, how terrible, this girl needs to get trauma therapy, she needs help. How come that killing the girl heals humiliation? It compounds it. So here you have one narrative of humiliation where the girl must die, another narrative of humiliation where the girl must live, and then I feel humiliated by listening to the mother at a meta level, and if I would say to the mother, look, you are a very bad mother, how on earth can you do that, you know, are you not enlightened, don't you love your daughter, then she would feel humiliated by me and would say, you are an arrogant Western person who doesn't respect our culture. So you see two universes of humiliation, girl must die, girl must live, and then humiliation, a cycle of humiliation at the meta level. So what should we do in that situation? What do we say to the mother that is more dignified than simply deriding her? So what could we say? We could say, your mind frame, your cultural frame developed in a fragmented world. The past 10,000 years, every community, every polity, every group had to be afraid of the other group. This is the 30 years war in Europe. You see the fragmentation. You know, if you want peace, prepare for war, was the motto. You could not escape this motto. It was always the Ministry of Defense that declared war. So this is the security dilemma. In that situation, the girl must die. This is the culture that evolved in that context. And it has a logic. It's the dominator society that has a logic, that has a function there. Because if you are, you know, attacked, the Mongols come, and the emperor in Beijing was a bad emperor, then, you know, the farmers suffered. If the emperor in Beijing was a good emperor and had everything well organized in his hierarchy, then the farmers could be protected. So it had a function. This dominator model had a function in this context, in the context of a security dilemma being strong. And you have, I just went to Aida Opera here in Metropolitan Opera. There, you know, just go to Aida. You see the culture. You really feel the culture that was dominant then. You know, glories, sacred thirst now claims me, says the main warrior of the Egyptians. Only war alone inflames me. on to victory. Death and battle will wreak on the foe. This is the language that was dominant in the past 10,000 years. And it had a function. And, you know, after the Second World War, women here in France who fell in love with German soldiers, they were humiliated after the war, shorn, you see their hair, and humiliated publicly publicly in the street. So peace and love was not a solution in that context. Loving your enemy was unpatriotic, a betrayal of your country. So, there is no path to peace. Peace is the path, is what Gandhi said. And this tenet, this sentence, can only manifest as soon as the security dilemma is weak or gone. And this is exactly what happens now. As soon as we understand that we are one family, that there is no enemy outgroup, that we are one family, we might have, you know, family members that are difficult and that are not difficult. We are one family, there are no outer enemies. In that situation, which we have now, after the end of the Cold War was the last manifestation of the strong security dilemma. Now we have a window of opportunity of making it possible that this sentence can become dominant. There is no path to peace, peace is the path. This is our window of opportunity now. So therefore, the mother who wants to kill her daughter or feels the duty to that, she never wants it, but she feels the duty, she has her culture cut out in a different context. And we now find ourselves, we can invite her, we can invite the Taliban, everybody, into understanding that the world has changed. We are in a historically unique situation. Our grandparents could not see the planet, the blue planet, from the astronaut's perspective. It's completely historically new. This is our chance. Also, you know, not only the security dilemma was something that everybody was caught in and couldn't escape. The tragedy of the commons dilemma, was another dilemma that everybody was caught in. What does it mean? It means, imagine a village in England. Maggie, you are, where are you, Maggie? Yes, you remember, you know, the English hamlet, huh? Where you had a commons, where everybody could put their cows to graze. And if one person, you know, this was a good solution, a good arrangement, as long as nobody got the idea that putting one more cow for himself would be feasible, because then everybody else would get less. So everybody had to take care that nobody would get this idea. Everybody would have to collaborate. As long as everybody collaborated, it was very well. The other vulnerable, you know, danger for this arrangement was newcomers. A newcomer could simply come and say, aha, this is my grazing ground. I put all my cows. And what would they do then, you know? So the commons are a very, you know, using resources together is a very good thing. But it is vulnerable. And now we are in a new, historically new situation. We understand that our planet is our commons. The entire planet is our commons. And we, as a human family, have to collaborate to use it responsibly together. Nobody can be going out and extracting all the resources just for himself or herself. So our planet is our commons, and now we have a chance to really make this metaphor, this reality manifested, because there is no outsider coming in. We are alone on this planet. There is nobody coming in taking it from us. If we manage to responsibly handle it, administrate it, then nobody else can take that from us. So we have the chance to do that now. So the fact that we are now, you know, past the strong security dilemma, that we are really seeing that we are one family on one tiny planet, this is an unprecedented window of opportunity. Now we can overcome the security dilemma and the commons dilemma. We have a chance if we do it, if you understand it intellectually and emotionally. We can now somehow manifest a global reality of dialogue, of partnership. We can go from this to this. So peace among us, this would be social sustainability, and peace with our ecosphere would be ecological sustainability. So if we now think back, and now we come to this book, we come to economic arrangements. As long as the dominator model was strong, our lives were like that. We had, people had education quite cut out, professional life cut out, private life cut out, not many choices. And then there was a strongman at the top. And here you could even have, slaves or different variations. This is the life of the past 10,000 years of most people. In that context, if you want peace, prepare for war. Victory over the enemy brings us peace and prosperity. Our society is strong and healthy when we succeed with subjugating people and exploiting nature. This is the narrative of that time. Overt humiliation, the language of the security dilemma. But then came something that has to do with what I said before, that beliefs have two functions. The art of covert humiliation, the language of co-option into misrecognition. For example, as I said, if the emperor in Beijing was a good emperor, then he could keep the Mongols at bay. If he was a bad emperor, he couldn't. And how come that sometimes bad emperors were in power? Because they had kind of made up the explanation that bloodlines were important, or God's will was used to justify that somebody needed to be the emperor. So it was a way to artificially preserve privilege. And then you had a bad emperor, just because he was the son of another emperor. You could say. So when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society, they create for themselves, in the course of time, a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. This is the French economist Frédéric Bastiat. So first you do something and then you justify it. And interestingly, people will be co-opted. They will not see the manipulation in there. This is our, fallibility as humans, the fact that we are this. You need something? So, and here in America, now we are here in America. At some point, some Americans said, no, the British, they dominate us, we want liberation. And this is what Henry Carey said, the advisor to Abraham Lincoln. He said, for the British system, it is control and imperialism which comes first. And because there is no intention to developing the productive and creative powers of people, it resorts to looting. So the British Empire looted. And so Abraham Lincoln's advisor understood this, and he didn't get manipulated into believing it was a good thing. So he said, no, we want to be free. He said, in the American system, people come first, and we resort to the increasing of the productive powers and of labor to increase wealth here with us. So there was somebody who said, no. Okay? So this is the start of America. This is also the start of the enthusiasm with the American dream. There's a liberation impetus here, in the United States. We are free. So the first step to liberation was quite good, wasn't it? Everybody was invited to become the master instead of the slave, you could say, simplified said. And it is a good feeling. This is the promise of the American dream. But soon comes in the misrecognition. Because you wonder after a while, am I the master or the slave now? Here, the British Empire did it very well. The Rajas in India. The British came, they instrumentalized the Rajas. The Rajas were still powerful, they had all their privileges, but they had nothing to say anymore. They were kind of puppets in their castles. So were they the masters? No, they became the slaves, but they were co-opted into, accepting it. When you and me, we eat a pineapple. In Costa Rica now, there are monocultures of pineapples. They are sprayed with bromacil. The people get sick around it. The water is contaminated. And we are the Rajas here when we eat it. And then it comes closer that we are no longer the Rajas. Here in Ohio, I have a neighbor here in New York. She's from Ohio. She says when she was born 62 years ago, everything was clean in Ohio, water, air. Now they have fracking. So you see, the Rajas were the kings, then they became the kind of instruments, kind of half slaves, half kings, and then they go down, down, down. So this is what happens at the moment. There are more slaves today than at any time in human history. 21 million people live in quasi-slavery today. So this is why I wrote this book. Why this book? Linda and I, increasingly, this is from the book, felt that we could not afford hiding behind the excuse that we are not economists, while we at the same time witnessed the increase in humiliating effects from existing economic practices and institutions. Since economic structures represent the largest frames within which human activities occur, they are of utmost importance and cannot be overlooked. If the largest frames were to introduce systemic humiliation in the way apartheid did, this would be extremely significant. Under apartheid, since it was an all-encompassing system, all lives and relationships were tainted with humiliation. It was impossible to dignify apartheid by being kinder to each other or creating well-intentioned small-scale initiatives. The entire system had to be reshaped at the appropriate larger-scale level. What if today's apartheid is represented by the fact that exponential growth is incompatible with sustainability, for example? So here I have the chapters. Scarcity and environmental degradation are systemic now. Lack of trust becomes ubiquitous. Nobody, I should not trust any of you. And you should not trust me, because in the back of my mind, secretly, it might be a money profit maximizer. It might just be out to get your money. People are abused as means rather than respected as an end in themselves. I should see you as purses on two legs. I should see you as, victims for me wanting your money. Fear becomes overwhelming and debilitating. False choices crowd out relevant choices. Psychological damage flows from the imposition of the Homo economicus model. So what we see here, the art of covert humiliation, the language of co-option. In the, you remember the emperor in China. Good leadership, in a situation where you have to be afraid of your neighbor conquering you, good leadership risks being undermined when justified with bloodlines or God's will. Then communism, a dictatorship of a ruling party, is irreconcilable with ideals of good life for all. Capitalism, the ideal of freedom, is destroyed when freedom is freedom for the winner, rather than an even playing field for all. So we see always this insidious kind of coming back of the dominator model, even though we want to start with something functional and more liberating. So at the moment, we live in times where we are back at the old dominator model. Everybody who knows what the rat race is about, he thinks of himself as, just striving to stay alive in a system where basically there is not much freedom for most people. So where is this former dream of freedom? Where is it? So from you know, we thought when the liberation started, we thought we would become the master, and what came of it was most of us, the 99%, we became the underlings again. So social mobility, the American dream, has it really worked? No. You know, the historian Gregory Clark, he looked through the names of family names, and he found out that astonishingly, there's no more mobility in Sweden on these measures than there is in South America, says Clark. And America looks just like England and looks just like Sweden. And even more astonishingly, the numbers were the same in the Middle Ages as they are today. So where is this social mobility? It's not there. We are in the same dominator system. So what is success? You know, what is success? Elite city bankers, you know, earning £1 million plus bonuses, destroy £7 of value for every £1 they create. Hospital cleaners, in contrast, create over £10 in value for every £1 they receive in pay. So you see, what is success? You see, something is not working there. The same in China. You know, it was a communist dream. What is there left from the communist dream? You have heard about the son of a very high-ranking communist leader. Have you heard how he died 23 years ago? In a Ferrari, naked, because he was busy with sex plays. The women survived, he died. So Ferraris and big watches is what China is about now. Where is the communist dream of equality now? Islam, here's a long lament how the Kaaba looks. It looks like Las Vegas. It's a shopping mall. The holiest place of Islam today is a shopping mall. Okay. Here, Norway, you think at least Norway is untouched of this. It's a lovely place, huh? It's beautiful, old wooden houses at the water, at the fjord, lovely little streets. Beautiful, isn't it? A new shopping mall. So we have to complete this liberation. Obviously, so far, we haven't completed it. It was all starting well and going downwards towards the dominator model. Life, you know, liberation completed. Dignity, perhaps, is the better word. Not communism, not capitalism, not anything. Lifelong learning for having a dignified life as a member in the one human family who lives on its one tiny home planet. Traffic is a metaphor. Like, as long as there are no traffic lights, might is right. The big will force their way through the crossroad. Dignity is when we have traffic lights. The small cars have to wait in front of the red lights as much as the big cars. I think what happened during the past attempts to bring more freedom was the rigging of traffic lights through the art of humiliation. Might became right again. So we live now in a world of rigged traffic lights. And we have to get back to the idea of building real traffic lights. And building traffic lights, it reminds of this saying by Jean-Baptiste Henri Dominique Lacordaire, who lived in the 1802 till 1861. He says, between the weak and the strong, between the rich and the poor, between the lord and the slave, it is freedom which oppresses and the law which sets free. So he calls for traffic lights to protect this freedom. So we have at the moment two kinds of globalizations. The raiding of resources and colonizing of the 99% leads to global uniformity without diversity. This is what we have now. Then we have the ingathering of the human family, the coming together, you know, the consciousness that we are one family on one small planet. This is the path to global unity in diversity. So how can we somehow bring that to the level of economy? When I am I'm living globally, wherever I am, I'm told, we need growth to create jobs. Work is hard, and it must be hard. It's essential, the essence of work is it's to be hard. Lazy people do not want to work. Good people derive their dignity from successful hard work. Investors will finance your ideas, my ideas for products or services if I can convince them that I will find buyers and make a profit so that their investment will pay for them. This is the narrative that I find everywhere. And everybody believes it's a good narrative. This is a manipulative narrative that creates such a world. What would be the better narrative? The better narrative would be, there will never be enough jobs. We can make a growth as much as we want. Exponential growth is unsustainable, even if we try. Creativity can only be nurtured. It cannot be forced through hard work. Giving primacy to investor confidence in profit maximization ruins our planet and turns us all into colonized subjects. Every born human being deserves to live and contribute in dignity to respecting the planet's carrying capacity. This is a narrative that works. Welcome. So here we are. We are here now. And we have, at the moment, maximized the adaptation we learned here. 10,000 years ago, our adaptation was domination, dominator models. We simply maximize it now. This is the exponential curve of growth that we are engaging in at the moment and believe that this is the right path. But this is a path that is unsustainable. So we have to change it. This is our responsibility, people who sit here. We have to think in circles, not exploitation. And we have to think in dialogical relationships, not dominator models, in partnership. And is that a naive dream? Am I a dreamer? Am I simply, have rosy glasses? No. Why? Why do we have a chance to do that? Because for the first time, we really understand that we are one family on one planet, so we can overcome the security dilemma and the commons dilemma. We have a chance. We have a window of opportunity that our forefathers did not have. So this is our chance. So here is a list in the book, just many kind of examples of how things can be done differently in economical terms. And I just read you my own contribution to that. It's also in the book. I feel personally humiliated when, how is my identity? What can you do about your identity? I feel personally humiliated when I'm expected to draw my motivation for what makes my life meaningful from status or monetary remuneration. I'm motivated by stature, my pro-social contributions, rather than status, social rank, or class. I work very hard, day and night, basically, as Maggie said, 7 days a week. I work extremely hard. I receive neither traditional status nor salary for my efforts. My motivation is entirely independent from such rewards, and if it were otherwise, I would find the degradation and humiliation unbearable. Therefore, my path is not altruistic or egoistic. It is both, because I would not survive the humiliation of having to define myself as a status or salary-making machine that endangers the common good. I'm not a Pavlovian dog who needs status or monetary remuneration as incentives to work. I would not survive such emptiness of meaning and such poverty of spirit. And if we all were to build our identity in that way, then the world would change. So I invite you to reflect on that, because there is a critical mass that we need. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has, said Margaret Mead. And she had her office not far away here in the Museum of Natural History. So we need to transform everything, our inner identities and the global frames, from Wall Street game cultures to global partnership models. There is one anthropologist who is quite helpful. It is Alan Page Fiske. He says that all societies have 4 basic ways to collaborate. This is the communal sharing, what you do in a family. I give according to my ability and I get according to need. Authority ranking, it can be a good parent or a bad dictator. Then equality matching, I take care of your plants if you feed my cat. Market pricing, we know the ratio. This is an interesting finding and insight and categorization. And we see that from here it is very comprehensive. What happens in a family is really very rich. It becomes poorer and poorer. And at the moment, we allow our societies to be dominated by the poorest way of collaboration, the most dehumanizing way of collaboration. This defines us and this eats into all the others. So this is what we do now. So here, if we are in this word, market pricing defines all the rest. Basically, we should ask our babies to be profitable. A baby shouldn't be born if we make it, somehow a caricature of that. Or grandparents who can't really earn a living anymore, they shouldn't be there anymore. Market pricing defines more and more of all our segments of society. Market pricing eats itself in everywhere. Everybody is squeezed. People are paid less. Everything that has to do with nurture and care is squeezed out at the moment. So we have to do something about that. This is our task. I spent 5 weeks with a philosopher of social science, Howard Richards, in Chile this year. And he says, if we want to change all that, if we want to think new, we have to go back 2,000 years and look at Roman law. Roman law institutionalizes everything now, or the kind of successors of human law, the Roman law. And we have to go back and rethink Roman law. So he has written about this wonderfully. So the world we live in now is that we had movements that tried liberation movements, that started liberation movements. Freedom from socialist domination. I hear that in Recife, for example, when I travel, or in the East, in the former Soviet Union. Freedom from socialist domination. We need capitalism to be free. Investor confidence must be served. And then we are back to domination. Freedom from capitalist domination. This is what I heard in Chile, for example. We need socialism. And then party elite confidence must be served, and we are back to domination. So all this freedom from ends so far in our history in back to domination. North Korea, no, we have a dominator. This is Sao Paulo, Columba. Here we have the wealthy, and here we have the poor. It's very similar. So wherever I go in this world, I see that. I don't see that yet. And this is, I think, the future. It's the sitting together. It's the partnership. It's the consensus building in different ways. And I call that dignism. Why not forget about capitalism, socialism, communism, capitalism? I think these are labels that drive humiliation cycles. It's better to leave them behind. Why not talk about dignity, dignism, unity in diversity? And here we are at Teachers College. John Dewey was very big here at Teachers College, and he said we need an experimental society, an open society for that. So dignism means a world where every newborn finds space and is nurtured to unfold their highest and best, embedded in a social context of loving appreciation and connection. A world where the caring capacity of the planet guides the ways in which everybody's basic needs can be met. A world where we are united in respecting human rights and celebrating diversity, where we prevent unity from being perverted into oppressive uniformity and keep diversity from sliding into hostile division. This is, to me, dignism. This is the old dominator world, the old world where we all are in boxes. and we want to go there, really go there, not really then go back there again. Unity in diversity. We have the right to be equal whenever difference diminishes us. We have the right to be different whenever equality decharacterizes us. I learned that in South America, kind of a good definition of unity in diversity. So we started here, colonial being, the industrial being, then we are living here now. The shareholder, you know, the investor confidence is prime at the top. Every government, no government is free because the investor confidence must be served. So if we want to go into a world where we not only speak of stakeholders, Linda found the lovely word shareholder and careholder instead of stakeholder. If we want to build a world of sharegivers and careholders instead of shareholders and stakeholders, we have to change the frame of our institutions globally. This is our task, those who sit here. And we have this task, but we are blind to the task and blind to many things. We are blind to the significance of the security dilemma and the commons dilemma, and how big the window of opportunity is in which we live now. We are blind to that. We are blind to the significance of the equal dignity transition, and so on. There's a long list of blindnesses. I was born here. I want to see at the time. This was where I was born. This was communal sharing, a world of communal sharing. This was the farm where I grew up the first 6 years of my life. This is the house. I just went there and took another picture now. Then my parents, when I was 6, my mother had the dream of wanting her own home. And, you know, I always ask myself when I see this sign, home for sale, how can you know that this will not become a prison? How do you know that? Because this was the house where my family then moved, and it became a prison for me. From a community of communal sharing, suddenly I was in a kind of nuclear family, which was a kind of prison for me. So my entire life later, when I finished school, when I turned 20, I started to live globally, and I always searched for those contexts that are characterized by communal sharing. So I lived, for example, in Egypt for 7 years and worked there as a psychologist. So this is a wedding ceremony in Egypt. This is now Tahrir Square. So I'm thinking in terms of movements. This year I spent 4 months in South America. And there are many very interesting videos that are made that you can see on our website, you know, with Howard Richards. I told you about him, the Roman law. Then the father of solidarity economics, Luis Razeto. He will also contribute. He's linked to our World Dignity University initiative. And then David Calderoni, who wants to combine basic income and solidarity economics. And he talks about the precariat. He says that more and more people, he builds himself on a British scholar, Guy Standing, who has developed the concept of the precariat. It's the people who are sliding, you know, as I showed you before, who are sliding from being well off more and more into being squeezed. And then this is a very interesting interview. This is a young man who grew up in the triangle of death in Sao Paulo, the periphery, the kind of favela where there were more murders than anywhere else on the planet. He grew up there, and he said it was very good when there were strictly organized gangster gangs coming, because they made the favela more secure, because they hindered random killing. So it was good when the gangsters came and made a kind of strict rule. That was better. But what really saved his life was when the mothers came together and took care of young people. The love from the mothers made him survive. Now he is leading or part of an initiative where they have introduced a local currency into this local community, and they are no longer the triangle of death. So it's a very moving interview with him. You see it all on our website. Our dear peace linguist Francisco Gomez de Matos, very interesting. Then I was in the Amazon, at the frontier of the industrialization of the Amazon. And the local population is squeezed out, is terrorized, and I have really lived this. And you know, I was there for 2 weeks, two houses away from me. One person was executed one morning, another was executed there. An atmosphere of terror at the front line of industrialization. Here, this is Mariana. Mariana and I, we were together in the rainforest of Ecuador, and we somehow manifested more our World Dignity University in the rainforest of Ecuador, and you see lovely videos that we did together there. So Mariana and I, we spent July in Ecuador. So our task is to build global institutions that manifest global unity in diversity, global subsidiarity, continuous global revolution, reform and revolution, global appreciative caring, satyagraha, thou dialogue, and partnership. And interestingly, I think what is very important is that we have to now, when we want to work for a real dignified future for our planet, if we want to do that, then we have to remember one thing. We have to engage in a process. Some people say, but don't, you know, what is your solution? What will be the system that will work? They want me to say, aha, communism doesn't work, capitalism doesn't work, now dignism is A, B, C, D. No. The core of dignism is co-creation and process and reflexivity and trying. And here, Nikos Poulantzas, a Greco-French political sociologist in Paris, was one of Pol Pot's teachers. Seeing what he had instigated, he later committed suicide. So here, you know, here is an academic, and here I am standing, and I'm saying we need to do something new. And then some students might go to another country and make a rigid ideology from it that can go extremely wrong. So this is what we have to avoid. We have to avoid going from reflection to rigid ideology. So we need a meta transition. We need a continuous global revolution reform. As I said, we have the chance, a window of opportunity. What we need is courage, curiosity, awe and wonderment, patience, proud humility, walking the talk, swimming instead of clinging, humiliation awareness, and love. This is what we need for that. And I learned from Paulo Freire in South America, I'm an intellectual who is not afraid to be loving. I love people and I love the world. And it is because I love people and love the world that I fight for social justice to become established before charity. It's not charity that we need, it's social justice. So 6 million people died in the Holocaust. 8 million people die of poverty every year now. I think we have to stand up and not stand by. So therefore, we have our Human Dignity and Humiliation Studies Network, Global Fellowship of like-minded academics and practitioners, working for a new future for humankind. These are some people in our Global Advisory Board, in our network. We have launched the World Dignity University last year. Universitas Scholarium is the Latin word for university, a community of scholars. This is what we build, a community of like-minded scholars. So we call for a global movement of citizens to build institutions that end practices of humiliation and enable equality and dignity globally as a frame for equal dignity also locally. Imagine you have a television set, it doesn't work anymore. And there are no experts, electricians anymore. They just are not anymore there. What do you have to do? If you want to watch television, you have to sit down and become an expert on your own. It might take years before you can repair it, but it's the only choice. This is the situation we are on this planet now. We thought our politicians and economists were experts, but they are not. Now, all of us, we have to sit down and study. It's not enough to have some opinions, because with some opinions you cannot repair that. What is needed is to really sit down and become experts, and then from there slowly do something different. So it's a call for a world dignity movement, a movement that continuously co-creates sustainability, both socially and ecologically, locally and globally. I want to apologize now, because I might have humiliated some people here in the room. This always happens. 1 or 2 people stand up and say, "You said that, and I felt personally humiliated by what you said." So I want to preventively apologize if I have done that now. And after having done that, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you.